Okay, so I just want to finish off the site here, and also have a chance to look at making a new material and maybe investigating the options that you have for textures in Revit a little bit more. So I'm going to make a verge out the front of this shop, which is what's there in reality. So I've got this bit of lawn planting out there in the footpath. So I'm going to add that in, and I'm going to go to the site floor plan that I've got, and I'm just going to make a sub-region under Mass Against Site. We'll go to sub-region and draw the basic outline we want for that bit of lawn. So back at the photo, yeah, so it starts just next to the driveway. We don't need to be too precise here, but it's basically somewhere above that line that marks where the driveway is, so that's about here. And it looks like it's essentially in front of the line of the awning, so I might just follow that awning there. Maybe I'll bring it away at an angle because it does seem to follow the road a little bit as well. And then come back to here, and again just following along that line, which is actually a curve, so I'm going to switch to draw that with an arc. And notice how I'm leaving a gap between the road, or the gutter, that runs alongside the road, and this shape that I'm making. If you try to put them right next to each other, you'll often get errors with sub-regions. So try to leave gaps between them if you can. If you do need to have them butting up to each other or touching, a really good tip I can give you there is that you should draw either detail lines or reference planes so that you can trace them. And that usually works much better than just drawing them on their own. So that's just that technical issue with sub-regions. So remember, sub-regions essentially can't overlap. And that's why it can be really helpful to either leave a gap between them or draw something else first that you can trace. And there are quite a few things like that in Revit. Pads are similar, building pads. Okay, but anyhow, so I've got my sub-region shape, and now I want to assign my grass material. I'm going to go to here, where it's got the material slot, and click Browse. And then I think I already do have a grass material that I made earlier. Oh no, so I made a tarmac, not a grass. So, okay, so I've got site tarmac and site driveway are the two site materials I made. You can choose any of those. So I'm just going to start with the tarmac one. Right click and duplicate. So if you don't know any other way of making materials, that should be maybe the first method that you get used to. Do any of you use the other way to make a material from scratch? I'll just show you, just so you know, because you've probably been using the program for a while now, and so you might have seen that there is this option to create a new material down the bottom. That's more work. If you do that, you've got to set all the options, and you've got to think about the physical properties and lots of other options that you don't need to worry about. It's usually easier to duplicate an existing material. It's less work. So here, again, if you find one that's similar to what you want, and again, right-click and duplicate, you can give it the new name. It's like grass. Whoops. Where did that go? So, yeah, so, okay, so site grass. And then, so this should be your thought process. Once you've created the new material in this list on the left, you then need to think about the appearance usually. And you should always look to see, when you're working with the appearance, if there's a number here above that hand. If there's a number there, that means it's being shared by another material. So in other words, this site grass material was made by duplicating site tarmac, so they're sharing asphalt too. And if I adjust it here, it's going to adjust the tarmac material. So it's really important that you change that either by using duplicate or replace. So I'm going to go to replace. And then you'll often hear me say that there are materials that come in the library that you can access from anywhere. And what I mean is this. This is the rendering library. And so you can see you've got all these different folders. Most of those folders are from what are called physical materials. And they're useful if you're doing thermal analysis and more complex technical analysis, which you probably won't need to do. I very rarely do it. I've taught environmental analysis subjects, and even then we use those materials fairly rarely. So you can ignore anything there that says physical and just go straight to the appearance library. And it's got more in it anyway. If you expand that, you'll see it's got all these subfolders. If you have a look at the others, you can see they don't have as much. Right, so even this one, physical assets, that has a big list of folders, there isn't as much in there. So the appearance library folder is the big one. And so then you've got site work, and you've got all these different site materials, and you can see there as a pretty decent selection of grass materials. So maybe I'll start with this grass dark rye, but you can start with any. Double click, and that'll give us a basic setup for a grass material. And so the first thing you should always look for when you've made a new appearance is the type of material it is. And this is a generic material. If I go to this sash, for example, you might see it's a different type. It's wood, so it has different properties that we can adjust. But if I go back to site grass, again it's generic. And generic basically is the base material, so it has the most options that you can adjust. And in this case, it's only using the colour, in other words, the main properties in this generic panel, and the bump. If I expand that, you'll see it's got a black and white image that is based on that colour image. So they work together. So I want to change these to a better one that I've got. So I'm going to click on the file name, just below that image swatch, you've got the file name. And it'll bring up the default Autodesk Material Library folder. So if you haven't seen this before, these are files that you'll have installed on your computer whenever you install Revit or a range of other Autodesk programs. It comes with all of these files. Do you know what format they are, usually? Yeah, they're a type of bitmap. Yep, they are. So there are lots of different bitmap formats. And as you use Photoshop more, you'll get familiar with the different options, but you probably have heard of many of them. What's the most common? You must know the most common bitmap format. It's not BMP. BMP is the old bitmap format, but there's a much more common one that you would all know. PNG is the new one. That is pretty common. So these are PNG, so that's spot on. But there's an older one that's still probably a bit more common. JPEGs, that's right. JPEG is the most popular. They're nice small files. That PNG basically is the new JPEG. So PNG is great. You can use any of those formats, and if you have a look down the bottom, it tells you all the different formats it can use. So JPEGs, PNGs, TIFF, really important one for high quality. EXR, that's a really advanced format. HDR as well. GIF is another one. TGA. So you can source any of your own, and if you're looking for materials, that's what I'd recommend you search for. Don't try and find pre-made materials that other people have made. It won't give you very much, and it'll actually, it won't work in the way you want it to most of the time. So you're much better off just searching for these. And I know a lot of people who just make materials for a living, working in 3D firms. That's a specialist field. And they're really talented people because they're often people who've got training in fine arts or visual arts, and they can paint and do all of these amazing things with a 2D medium, and they just scan it in or paint it directly in Photoshop, and they make these images for use in materials. So there are people at Pixar and other places like that who just make the textures, and then other people stick it together on the models. So it's a big field, but again, because it's done so often, you can just go, I can't at the moment, but normally you can just go into Google. If the internet was working properly, I could show you. Here we are. And just search for, now it's working, what's a material that you might be interested in? Granite, perfect, yep. Granite. The key word is seamless. Texture, that's it. And you will find millions, not just thousands. Yeah. I used to pay for these things. I've paid thousands and thousands for really high quality textures. And now, I mean, I still use those, but quite often I'll do a search for the same thing. So I've got a big pack of, say, timber files that I paid a lot of money for. Sometimes I'll just search for that same timber and I'll find a better one for free online. Yep, sure. Yeah, yep, sure. So what's your screen number? Look, I'll be very quick and then I'll give that. Okay, so again, I can use that grass that I've saved for you, and this is a really good one. So if you go into the P drive, into interior design, and then 3D and digital presentations, I've saved a grass seamless texture. And so then to see how that repeats, I'm going to click on the image swatch and just check the size. So it's about 1 metre by 1 metre. That's probably a good size. Maybe I'll just change it slightly. I'll make it 1500 by 1500. Oh, just the way the image is. So, yeah, so it repeats, yeah, without the joins being obvious, yeah. And so then the bumps, if you're doing a high quality render, they might be useful, but in this case, I'm just going to turn them off. You don't always need the bumps. Now, that should be assigned, but you see if I select that again, you've probably seen this before, it doesn't always work the first time. It'll make the material, but sometimes you have to go and assign the material twice. It's just one of those bugs with Revit 2018. Otherwise though, you can see now we've got Revit grass. So I just want to go over that, make sure you can assign materials to all those parts of the exterior that you need. And then, again, when we start doing the modelling of the interior, then we can go further with materials and look at some of those other options.